Jackson, if she would go ahead and lead us in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Please join me in a moment of silence. Will you please stand and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ann. Council, we have a couple of consent items, specifically the approval of March 15th, 2020 City Council meeting minutes and the approval of the April 5th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. Any comments or questions?
Just a couple of changes that are already given to Brittany.
Okay. Any other comments, questions on those minutes? Okay, then do I have an approval? And if you approve it, please make note of the changes that have been submitted to Brittany in your motion. Do I have any approval to approve the consent items?
I move to approve the consent items with the changes as noted.
Thank you, Diane. And seconded, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hear none, thank you. Okay, this is public comment period. If you have something you'd like to share with us, any topic, anything we're going to discuss tonight, or anything that you'd like to discuss that's not on the agenda tonight, you're surely welcome to do so. Please come to the mic. Just give us your name and address. Thanks, Kevin.
I'm Kevin Homer. I live at 5398 South 4000 West here in Syracuse. 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was an incident that happened at an apartment complex over here on 1900 where there were shots fired, and later on, Roy City Police Department was instrumental in apprehending the people involved in that. I know that we're not going to be able to ever take the evil or the stupidity out of the hearts of some people. It's just good to know that there are some men and women that will step up and defend our laws and protect the rest of us. So I just want to let the police department, if you would convey to the rest of the department, sometimes it's thankless, but not right now. I appreciate what was done. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Anybody else like to share a thought? You're surely welcome to. Okay, seeing none and hearing none, we'll go ahead and move to the action items. Andy, I think you're going to talk to us about the alcohol beverage license. Is that right?
There's really not much to say. The new Farmhouse and Sacco applied for an alcoholic beverage license. They met all the requirements.
Okay. Council comments, questions?
I have a question in regards to the different levels. I guess the different levels of alcohol beverages would be a different amount of money that they would ask for. And if they wanted to change, they would just ask for approval for a change in that amount. Is that kind of how that works? Mm-hmm.
Okay. Randy, we don't want to leave you out. If you have any questions, please speak up.
This is just for the resale of alcoholic beverages. This is not a bar license, correct, Andy? Okay.
Okay. Council, any other questions, comments? Okay, then do I have a motion then to approve the request for approval for an alcoholic beverage license at Farmhouse at Sacco's located at 6050 South, 1900 West?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Andy, before I ask for the next part of the motion, normally at this case, I would basically just ask all in favor. But in light of the fact that Randy is electronicked out, should I basically do a roll call vote?
You could do a roll call.
Okay, just to be safe. Okay, let's do that. Brittany, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, but could you do a roll call vote then? Make sure we get all the votes on this. Thank you.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Sophie Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Scadden,
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. We're going to talk about consideration resolution 22-6, amending the Roy City Personnel Policy and Procedural Manual. Matt, I think you're going to talk this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor stated before you, you have resolution 22-6 for consideration. This resolution will do a couple of things. Mainly what has spurred this resolution is a couple of House bills this last legislative session. One of the House bills being 449. And what this does is it requires certain agencies to provide bereavement leave for employees that are affected by miscarriages or stillbirth. So what this does is revise our personnel policy to reflect that rule change with the state legislature. We also, while we were at it, before this policy was called a funeral leave policy, and now we were calling it a bereavement leave. As well as some of the other things that we added was stepfather, stepmother, stepchildren of employees. So if they happen to have somebody pass away that is of that, they would get up to 3 days of bereavement leave under the city policy. The next thing it has to do with is the state adopted House Bill 238, which is Juneteenth National Freedom Day. In this, it adds that to our personnel policy for a paid city holiday. That would include a total of 13 paid city holidays. I can go into what other cities are doing if you would like me to discuss that. Or I can turn the time over to you to discuss it, whatever you would prefer.
Well, I have a question in regards to what the cost of that would be, and some I've heard are removing a holiday and adding this holiday, so we're not increasing that expense. So maybe you can discuss, I'm sure you thought of those different
couple of
things.
those
And
different parameters, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So as far as the costs go, just a direct, if you take everybody's wage and take a day of saying, so no other parameters whatsoever of just a strict cost, you're roughly around $35,000 for that paid holiday. But with that being said, many jobs are, let's say like the finance department, they have a job to do in a month. If they take a week off, there's nobody else to cover them. So they have to work harder the next day. Something like police or fire, there's minimum manning. So they don't necessarily get that holiday off because of the nature of their position. But other days they're going to have to get that holiday at some point in time and approved down to minimum manning. And so you could argue that there's not a direct correlation of costs there, but I mean, realistically, there is going to be a cost with that. But to say that the 35,000 is just literally taking it out and saying wages times the holiday pay is about that.
And one of the things that might add to that is that if an employee basically has to work on a holiday, then they get holiday pay. Could we maybe just talk about what that number would be if a person was required to work on that day?
So if an employee is required to work that day, mainly police and fire, because the administrative offices are closed down, what happens is they get that accrued into their leave. And so they wouldn't get paid above and beyond for that day. They would get that day to use somewhere else, is how that works. In order to hit overtime, let's say they have to work like a police officer, they have to work the 40 hours in a week to get overtime above and beyond. So if they take that holiday off and then work another Saturday or something, they would still have to be required to work that 40 hours in order to receive that time and a half. So I hope
Thank
that
you.
answers that question. As far as other cities go, it's kind of everywhere in between. To be quite honest, there's some cities that have 13 holidays. There's some cities that have 12 holidays. There's some cities that give floating holidays to make it so you can pick and choose what holiday you want off. I've heard the county just today, they took away a holiday. It was Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples' Day. Most cities that I've talked to aren't considering that, of taking other holidays away. When I look at from a survey that went out with the HR representatives, right now there are 23 cities that have approved it, 3 cities that have not, and 50-ish cities that are undecided. Of those 50s, approximately 20 cities are leaning toward adding it. So.
Right, and we
if
also, but
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
as I say, we also have to take into consideration that this is actually an additional fringe benefit when we're looking to go out and acquire new talent to the city. Our biggest concern is honestly the private sector, because my employer is giving it to me. I know, speaking with Joe Paul, the LDS Church has taken and provided for it. Diane, you being a government employee as well are also getting it. And I don't believe the federal government took a day away. And so, I mean, the idea and notion of a cost associated with that $35,000 just for broader employee morale, as well as just the cultural significance of the day, I mean, far outseeds the $35,000 cost to the city is what we also have to take into consideration.
So the company I work for actually is just a subcontractor, but they took another holiday away.
Did they?
Uh-huh. And the people I've talked to, they've had a holiday taken away from their employment. So that's my experience with it. So,
Fair enough.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think just,
I'm against giving and taking away. As I say, we should just give it, because again, it is part of the fringe benefits package that somebody that comes and is looking for an opportunity says, oh, I get an additional day. And if we follow it in alignment with, because again, state offices are going to be closed on that holiday. Federal offices are also closed, as well as it's a federal banking holiday. So there's no, financial transactions that can technically be processed on that day as well. So again, yeah.
And whatever way we go, I think asking the employees if they would rather pick a day or survey and say, which would you rather have? I think
We could do something.
I don't know.
So you're saying go ahead and give the 13 holidays, give the extra, but give them it as a flex day. They could take the Juneteenth off or use it as a flex day. Is that?
Not
So-
so much a flex day, more of a deciding if they want to have the day after Thanksgiving or whatever it is, whatever day, like if we're going to switch days and take a day away.
I mean, I'll speak from a day after Thanksgiving perspective. If you keep the city office building open, as a former IT guy, shut your internet down because nobody is working on that day. They're just getting everything prepped and ready for Cyber Monday. So, I mean, if we're going to take away a day, I wouldn't propose that we take that day away. And again, I'm not a proponent of taking it away in exchange for this.
I agree. That wouldn't be a good day to take away, but I do believe that Columbus Day could be an option. I believe that some of the history or tradition or holiday things are definitely a lot less for that particular holiday. And so many places don't even have that as a holiday.
That's true, but they've also changed Columbus Day to more of Indigenous People Day. And now do you determine who has more?
Trumps, who, yeah.
Yeah,
mhm.
so.
Let me offer a thought, council, as you're pondering this. We really have in this resolution 2 issues. One issue is going to be the bereavement leave, which are mandated by statute that we have to put in. And second is the option of considering adding another holiday. That's what's in the resolution today. If we are thinking at all about modifying about a different day or something other than what's printed, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, we need to really come back and readdress a different resolution, because I'm going to ask for a motion, and unless I don't understand, I'm not sure how I can modify this resolution.
Well, if we can modify it, if we could do that, we could say on certain days, however the council would prefer to modify it.
Okay. So, but I need to have that as maybe at least some dialogue that suggests the majority of you are willing to go ahead and make some modifications so we can make that as addendum to this resolution. I just want to make sure that we understand that right now, what's presented to you would be as the approval of a resolution that's going to add, okay, another holiday. If
I
you
motion
believe-
that we, as I say, Mayor, I motion that we approve it as stated. So we give the additional holiday as well as, again, we're getting an alignment on the bereavement.
Okay, okay. So with that, we have a motion, okay, by Randy. Do I have a second to the
I'll s-
resolution
I'll second
22-6? Okay, I now have a second. This will be a roll call vote. So go ahead, Brittany, and go ahead and give us a roll call vote on this one.
Councilmember Joe Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Sophie Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
and Councilmember Scadden.
Aye.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we pass the resolution as stated, okay, and we'll just move forward with that, okay? And that would make a great comment in your talk with the students that we recognize Juneteenth, okay? So you may want to add that, okay? Perfect. Okay, thank you, council. We do have some presentations. Amber, I think you're going to talk to us about the 2023 budget proposal. Thank you.
Okay, we're trying to figure out how to get this so Randy can see it. Now I have an error.
Don't worry, I've got the full PDF that I can follow along
Oh, you
with.
do?
Yeah, I'm fine. If you can't get it, it's totally fine.
It gave me an error, so if you're okay, unless I need to go back.
There it is, okay?
Perfect.
You see that okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right, Mayor and Council, I am pleased to present to you a balanced budget for the fiscal year 2023. This has been a collaboration between Matt and all the department directors, and I thank them for their efforts. The total FY 2023 general fund budget, including Class C roads and transportation, totals $23,178,323. This represents a slight decrease from the current year modified budget of 0.058%. We have kept the budget fairly consistent with the current year in terms of revenue projections and expenditures so that we can monitor the economy throughout the year and make adjustments as needed. Okay, so as you can see from the slide here, taxes are our biggest revenue source at 14.7 million, and this includes property tax, sales tax, and franchise taxes. The second largest revenue source is charges for services at 3.4 million, and this includes things like ambulance services and then the complex aquatic center and recreation revenue. This is a graph showing the largest sources of revenue over the past 10 years. The first bar is property taxes, the second is sales tax, and the third is franchise taxes. So you can see property taxes have stayed fairly consistent while sales tax has grown quite a bit over the last 10 years. Okay, so this slide shows expenditures by department. Those two largest ones, that's public safety, police and fire, and it accounts for 49% of general fund expenditures. Parks and recreation is the next largest expenditure. And then the funding for Class C roads and transportation infrastructure is restricted to those uses. So it's not available to use for wages and other general fund services. This graph here shows a comparison. The bottom line is property taxes over the last 10 years, and the top line is public safety expenditures over the last 10 years.
I have a quick question. What page are you on?
Yeah, I know.
I'm not on a page in the budget. I
Okay.
just did a presentation
Okay,
and then
Okay,
we're
'cause I'm
sorry.
like, I'm
Okay,
sitting there
We're
trying to find
catch
it
up
too.
and figure out where
I'm
you're at.
like, I can't find it.
So
Sorry.
your budget document has all of this information in it,
Okay.
and then you can look for it later. And I'm just doing a quick
Perfect.
summary of
But
the
some-
Okay.
what- some-
100
way.
pages that are in your document. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, So here we have property taxes on the bottom line and then public safety expenditures on the top line. So the idea of property taxes is they are the ones that pay for public safety expenditures. And you can see the difference between what we bring in on property taxes and how much we're actually expending on public safety expenditures. The jump at the end on public safety is for the salary survey that we implemented this last January. So we are currently at a deficit of 7.2 million of public safety expenditures compared to property tax revenue. The deficit is covered mostly by sales tax, and as sales tax fluctuates, this becomes the most difficult thing to pay for public safety. As that goes down, we need another revenue source to help cover that deficit. We had quite a few budget requests this year that we were unable to fund and still provide you with a balanced budget. The largest requests included 5 additional police officers for a total cost of $550,000. That includes wages, benefits, and equipment for those officers. 9 additional firefighters for a total cost of $800,000 in wages, benefits, and equipment. And then repairs and upgrades at the complex totaling a little over $1 million. The proposed budget is unable to support these requests. If the council wishes to consider granting these requests, this would need to come from either increasing the property tax rate or deciding what else to cut out of the proposed budget. So included in the proposed budget, we have a 2% COLA for all employees and a merit increase. As department directors, our employees are our greatest asset. Maintaining the STEP system is vital to keeping quality employees. And as we have seen, wage adjustments to stay competitive with surrounding cities can be very expensive. Including a COLA each year will help us stay competitive and budget for those costs. The budget also includes a 9% increase on health insurance premiums. The city covers 85.5% of the insurance premium and the employee pays the remainder. This year, we did add a value plan option that is a lower cost to the employees that gives them a less cost even with the 9% increase. And we were able to do this by the lower plan has a smaller network of providers. So we can give them a decrease in expenses if they're willing to switch to that. Each of the plans include a high deductible option that is also a lower cost to the employee, and the employees will receive more information about these changes in our open enrollment meeting next week. Okay, the Utah retirement system rates are being held steady this year, so there's no budgeted increase proposed. And then the personnel changes in the proposed budget, including adding a community and economic development director / assistant city manager. That's a long title. It also includes a new part-time wage scale as part of the salary survey for all part-time and seasonal staff, and that includes the mayor and city council positions. Okay, so just some highlights from the 2023 budget. All the departments have been held relatively constant with the current year. So these highlights are pretty minimal, you'll see. The legislative operations budget decreased by $32,000, and that's due to this being a non-municipal election year. Building maintenance operations budget increased $16,000, and that's for janitorial costs. The police department budget increased about $13,000 for Weber County fees for animal control sheltering. The fire department operations increased $19,000. They've had an increase in medical supplies and then also some equipment on a new vehicle. And then there's the community development personnel increase for that position, about $190,000. Public Works operations budget increased $9,000 because Wasatch Civil is increasing their engineering fees for this coming year. And then the Complex Aquatic Center and Parks and Recreation operations budget increased by about $25,000 combined, and that was just for increase in supply costs. So you can see most of the departments, these are very minimal changes for operation expenditures. They've been told or held to about what they've been spending this year. Okay, for these are the capital projects in the general fund. We have that ramp grant every year for $37,500. That's just the annual population grant. And a project will be determined for that. And then we have the $300,000 in there for the pickleball courts that we've talked about. Class C roads has some street lighting and then a few equipment purchases. And then there's $400,000 in transportation infrastructure for the 6,000 South curb gutter and sidewalk project. Okay, so for the capital projects fund, we had quite a few items in there that we were proposing that be approved for this year. This is just a summary by department because it's quite a long list, and there is a list included in your budget document that you guys have there, so you can review all of those items that are included. This is just a summary of the total per department. Okay, for the utility enterprise funds, the proposed budget does include fee increases in the water and sewer utility fund, as well as the solid waste utility fund. The total increase is $3.32 per month for residential customers. We have received several fee increases from our service providers, including Weber Basin Water, Central Weber Sewer, Weber Waste Management, and Weber County Landfill. So this increase will cover those increased costs. Then at the bottom, there's the operations budget, administrative budget, and then capital expenditures for the water and sewer utility fund. And then these are just the budgets for the storm sewer utility fund, their capital budget, and then the solid waste utility fund, their operations budget, and they don't have any capital proposed. Okay, the city has two internal service funds that provide services to all of the departments, and this is the information technology and the risk management fund. The information technology budget is 1.2 million this year and includes continued upgrades and access controls at the buildings and parks, primary storage for the file and application servers, and network core that handles switching and routing for the network infrastructure. And then the risk management budget is 300,000, and that includes the insurance premiums for liability and property insurance. Okay, the last couple, we have a few special revenue funds, the Storm Sewer Development Fund and the Park Development Fund. These both come from impact fees from building permits. And both of these are kind of, the budgets here are what's left in that fund. So the Storm Sewer Development has 196,000 proposed to be used at the 4,800 South Storm Drain and the 4,000 South Detention Basin. That will pretty much use all of this department's budget. And then the park development, same thing. They have 85,000 to be used for playground inspection equipment, and then 35,000 for trees and cement work at George Wallen Park. So now that the city is receiving less money from residential building permits, these funds will start to kind of go away. So after this year, it will just be whatever we bring in that year could be spent for the next year. Okay, the cemetery perpetual fund. This is used to account for monies held to expand and maintain the city cemetery. All available plots in the cemetery have been sold, so there's no budget set forth for this fund. The city is looking at options and funding feasibility of an additional cemetery, and the current fund balance can be used to purchase additional property for that. And then we'd also need to use funding from either the general fund or the capital projects fund at a future date to fund the rest of that. Okay, so the next steps, the administration proposed budget is now the city council's tentative budget, and that's what you have there, your document. It is your budget to review and consider for approval. We will be posting the budget on the website tomorrow morning. The budget document you have received has a much more detailed narrative explaining all of the changes, and then also a line item detail for each department. We can hold budget work sessions to go over the budget in more detail, and the final budget must be adopted by June 21st.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Okay, council, a couple of things before I ask you if you have any questions. First is that this is just an introduction. Our game plan would be is now to assemble a work session where we can actually do a deep dive into the details of the budget, answer any questions you may have. But there may be some questions that you might have for Amber or Matt as it relates to what you just heard. And may I ask Matt, Amber, that's a really good summary. If you don't mind, would you mind passing the charts that you've made up and send those to council as we prepare to do a work session? There's some really good information that's there that I think would be very helpful as they're working through that. So with that then, oh, by the way, I should mention, although Amber didn't and Matt didn't yet, but I assume you will, there was $7 million of projects, asks that were asked and not included in this budget. Matt and I talked about that a little bit earlier. That's the highest amount I've ever seen, okay, in this municipality. Typically, it's about 2.3, 4 million. I've never seen a 7 million. So that's a lot of stuff that was needed or asked that, needless to say, didn't make it into the budget. So with that, any questions for Amber or Matt?
I agree with asking you to send us your presentation. That was excellent. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, with that, with no questions, Amber, thank you. Great job. A good rundown. Okay, we appreciate that. Appreciate the hard work of putting this together. Never easy, but needless to say, very important. So we got $23 million. Think about it. Please read through the document. We're going to ask Brittany if she would go ahead and work the schedule. We've asked you to submit your leave. I'd like to see if there's a possibility all of us getting in a meeting, work session to basically flush through this all together. But we recognize that you got some things happening and we need to make sure we work that in. So just be aware of that. But Brittany's going to kind of work that over and see if she can't find a time when we can all get together. Okay. Okay. With that, thank you again, Amber. Great job. Okay. We got a couple of discussion items. First one is going to be Hammond. I think you're going to talk to us about towing RFP. Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, appreciate you taking a little time to go over this tonight. So basically, give you a little history on the background of towing in Weber County. So Roy City, for as long as I've worked here, we've used the general rotation. We've never contracted with a particular company. That's worked out with kind of mixed reviews over the years. So as we did that, we've had some tow companies that were great and provided a great service to our citizens. We had some that didn't live up to our standards. So as times went on, more and more cities are moving to either sole source or multi-company providers, and they're getting out of this business of going off of the general rotation. Kind of what fueled that movement from the general rotation is one company would get into the rotation, and then they would form 7, 8, even 9 or 10 other companies under different names. It was the same company, but they would do that to get more spots in the police rotations. So as they did that, the pool became extremely diluted. There was a lot of kind of back and forth with what company is really coming out and them using their other companies. We also had a lot of problems with dispatch services over there, not dispatch with our Weber County dispatch, but with the dispatch company that the tow companies would contract with. First, they actually had a business in Roy, then they were out of state, lots of different drama and things there. So we came to the conclusion that we needed to move to a better system for Roy City. Some of the things that also moved that is we would have a Roy resident get their car impounded in Roy, and it would get taken as far away as Far West or up into Layton. And we wanted to provide a tow service for our people that if they were in Roy, their vehicle would be stored very close to Roy, and we're not sending them all over. So we put it out for an RFP. We initially we did 2 rounds of RFPs. Now let's give you a little bit of background on that. So the first RFP put out by policemen who had little idea of zoning ordinances, never looked at a zoning map in the city of Roy until this go around. Learned a lot about zoning from Steve, and needless to say, the first round of requiring the tow agency to have a yard in Roy didn't really work out very well within the plan. So that after that period expired, we put the RFP back out. And on this second round of the RFP, we asked that we remove the boundary restriction and put some language in there about giving preference to tow companies that have a close proximity to Roy. So we had, I think, was it 9 or 11, Brittany, packets submitted? I think it was, so yeah, 11 packets were submitted by various companies. We went through all the packets. There was a lot of very good competitive companies that brought in a great product to us. As we looked at that, we narrowed that list down to 3, and this is how this list of 3 would work in Roy City. So we're kind of piggybacking on what North Ogden did. North Ogden chose 5 companies to be in their rotation. We chose 3 companies to be in their rotation. And the idea behind that is if you have one company that is contracted with the city to provide services and we have a 3-car accident, that's that one company's responsibility to come and deal with all 3. But if we have 3 different companies, we're getting one resource from each of the companies. And we think that over time, that will give us a better overall service. And we also ended up with 3 companies that have storage lots in very close proximity to Roy. So we're kind of meeting what we were initially trying to do is get companies that are good and reliable and have storage locations that are close to the city so that our people aren't getting, having to go all over the county to get their cars back. And the recommendation that we had, so we met as so Brittany was there, Matt was there, Brody, me, Chief Gwynn, and Steve. We went over all of the packets. And as we went through those packets, we came down to the consensus of 3 companies that we would be recommending for you to enter into a contract with. And those companies are Brett's, Kirk's, and Stoffers. Those 3 companies would be on a rotation for light or regular tows, your normal traffic accident, your police impound for DUIs. And then Brett's and Stoffers would be on a rotation on heavy tows. We don't really get a lot of those in Roy. So we would have the 3 companies for light tows, the 2 companies for heavy tows. And the way our Weber Dispatch Center works, they have the computer-aided CAD system to generate a natural rotation between those 3 companies. That's where we're at today. Question?
Okay, council, any questions?
Sounds like you did your homework. And are these gentlemen here from all them towing companies that you chose or didn't choose?
It looks like we have the happy ones here.
Okay. Okay, so what's the next step in this process?
So we need to work out a contract with the individual companies right now. In the RFP, we stated that we would be talking about it tonight, and that's why this is here
Okay.
today.
Mhm.
The next step in the process would just be bringing a contract between Royce City and these tow companies. Please remember that this isn't something that we fund or anything like that. This is just to provide better city services for the city. So we'll have that contract here pretty quick.
Okay. Council, you okay with everything you've heard?
Yeah, I think once you get towed, my daughter got towed once down in Woods Cross and they towed it so far away for her to go and get her car. So I think make it, easier more convenient to get your car.
As far as one cost to the city, each of the companies did include that they would tow all Royce City fleet vehicles for free.
Oh,
So in the past, we've had, especially with those Dodge Chargers, we've had a number of those, and they've all 3 companies agreed that that was part of their bid, was to tow our city vehicles for free. So that is a nice benefit as part of
And
this.
does that include city council's cars too? Just
no,
thought I'd
Andy.
ask.
No, Randy.
You want to borrow my AAA card?
Okay, Diane, you had a question?
Is there a time limit, or is this renewed like every year, or what's the situation on that?
That would all be on the contract, yeah, that we haven't had yet, so.
So you say, sorry, you say they're within close proximity where the yards at for these individual towing companies?
Within a half a mile on all of them.
Is that what the
Brett's is
proximity
on
was?
Pennsylvania. Stoffers is just over the border on West Haven. Kirk's has a lot in Roy and also ability to go offside of there. So we're within minutes of the city on each of them.
Perfect.
And that original thing, we tried to draw we wanted to put in there, should it be a 1 mile or 5 miles? And then as we started drawing circles, we realized that any boundary we picked other than the city made some people eligible and some people not eligible. So we thought it was best to remove that verbiage completely and just focus more on the company as a whole and the location of the yard and accomplishing it. And we also wanted good reputable companies who had good standings within the community. As we talked to officers and having worked with the companies over the years, there's definitely some companies that have earned a better name than others. And so we really do feel like we've got 3 good, solid companies to work with in the future.
Yeah, perfect.
I
Perfect.
appreciate you facilitating this for the citizens and for city. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
How often do you do the towing? As a city, how often are you calling?
Daily. So on our car accidents, I think we average like 1 or 2 a day.
Okay.
I mean, I would say on an average week for Royce City, we probably would have maybe 15 tows or so. When I originally put the RFP out, I think I kind of overestimated our number in there a little bit of what I thought it would be, because I didn't want a company going, going that, oh, you only told me we were gonna have 200 or 600 tows, but I'm actually doing 900. I wasn't prepared for this. But in reality, what I learned is that for them, the number that I put on there, they looked at that as a financial marker for their business. And so realistically, I would see us probably towing maybe 15 cars a week or a little bit more, depending.
Good information. Good question. Council, anything else? Okay, this is a discussion item. Obviously, Matt's going to present formally contracts. Once the contracts come in, we'll get a vote on those, and then we'll go ahead and sign those into an agreement. So, okay, thank you, Hemming. Thank you. Great job. Okay, street lighting on 5600, Matt?
As you know, we've been meeting with the engineering firm and the contractor for 5600 South for the widening. They brought up a question that we wanted to talk amongst the council members about, and it's just with the street lighting. As you know, we have the beautification efforts on 1900 West. Those street lights are around $12,000 to $14,000 depending on the boring. And the boring is a significant cost of that because you're having to bore for that electricity. The conversation came up in one of our meetings of saying, would we like to continue that effort down 5600? Now is the time to do it if we wanted to do it, because they would be able to open up the road, put down the line, everything. So there is a significant cost to it. Like I said, it was about $12,000 to $14,000. Right now, just for the lights, it would be around $8,000 per light. We looked at it and it looks like there'd be about 140 lights down the corridor if we space them out relatively close to what we have up here. And that's just over like $1.1 million. So the conversation just needs to happen to see if we want to entertain that in the future, just so we can give UDOT a recommendation. Just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that though.
No, Matt, just for clarification, that's not 1.1 million out of our budget. That's out of UDOT's budget, correct? Just for clarification.
No, that would be something that we would have to do. Roy
gotcha.
City.
Well, what's
So
the
any
difference in just a regular light compared to the decorative ones? What's the cost difference?
We were getting the regular lights for $3,500 instead of the 8,000.
So $4,500 difference.
Well, I think we have to kind of look at things in perspective. UDOT's going to put the street in. Down 5600, UDOT will put lights in. They won't be spaced like we do on 1900. As you can tell, they have their lights and then we've established our lights through the beautification recommendations. So some of the lights may not necessarily have to be UDOT lights. They could be the lights we'd like to put in there. So the cost would be as whatever that cost would be. But if we follow the same pattern, UDOT would probably never put 100 some odd lights down 5600. They may put 10 or 15. Ross may have some insight on that. So whatever the other or the increased number will be under this betterment philosophy that they have, they're going to make the improvements. So what betterments, strange word, but that's the word to use. What betterments do we want to add while they're going through this construction phase so that it's incorporated into 5600? And if you like what you see on 1900 and you'd like to see that continued in 5600, UDOT needs that answer so that they wire that street in accordance to what we wanted to have that wired. And we have to be willing to pay the difference.
What's the cost of the wiring if it's put in, but we delay the actual putting in of the lights? You know, like, I don't know where we're going to pick up $1.1 million. We already had 7 million we couldn't do. Is that something that can be done? They can put the wiring in
Definitely price that out, yeah.
and check into that. And for me, before I was in city council and since, I would say probably 3 times a month, someone complains to me about the money that was spent on those lights.
Okay.
So that's the interaction I've had with citizens in regards to what, I mean, they think they're nice, but I don't even know they know how much it costs, but they think that it costs too much, whatever it is. And what about maintenance? If we put those lights in for that amount, is that, how much is the long-term maintenance of that?
Yeah. What's the longevity of them? How long do we get out of them?
Assuming they don't get hit by a semi, they do last quite a while, but we have had issues with that as well.
With being hit by a semi?
Semi trucks and cars and
Fair enough.
anything. They always hit the lights coming by.
Not everybody drives as good as you, Randy.
Don't talk to my wife then. So
So yes,
Um,
there's an obvious ongoing cost to that. Yes.
fair enough.
To say, to try to pencil out, we put about $100,000 for all of the city lights, every one of them in a budget, that's about how much we spend a year on it. And that's including those
They,
lights. up
they
there.
look good and they spruce the city up, but if I'm faced with the decision of I need 5 police officers on the road, or I need
Right.
9
That's right.
fire paramedics on the road, fire medics, I know which direction I'm gonna go.
100%. Yeah.
My safety and security means more than a pretty light. I'm not discrediting, they look good and they bring, attractiveness to the city, but when we're running those lean and mean as we are, we've got to put our priorities where they're at, and
Well,
taking care
that's an
of the
excellent-
net necessities becomes more important than the niceties.
And that's an important conversation, but maybe we ought to be thinking, should we just put the wiring in? And then if someday the situation shifts or whatever, at least that portion of the infrastructure is in play. And then we bore a hole of what do we have to do to make access to a new light, maybe in 20 years or 10 years. That may be an option for a future city council.
That's what I'd like to see is cost on just
Yeah, I'd like to
laying
know
the
that.
groundwork.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's-
Put conduit in.
Right.
instead of wire.
It'd be, I'd like
Yeah,
to
if
know
they
that.
put conduit in, we can pull our wire through it and that's.
What's the
the
percentage of
same-
the $100,000 that has a tendency to go to these fancier lights? I mean, are they that needy? How much needier are they? I mean, are they pretty equal in regards to long-term maintenance compared to the others, or do they have a higher percentage? That sort of thing.
How long they last?
No, like, for either repairs or maintenance or the lights that you have to replace. Is there much difference them to the fancy ones versus the traditional?
They last forever. Nobody runs over them because they're LEDs.
And is it the same wiring for the basic style versus the fancy style? Is it the same?
You'd have more work. I mean, I like to be the opportunity that if we ever get a windfall in the city and we want to spruce it up, that we can add them, because you can put flags on them, you can put hanging baskets on them. I mean, there is some aesthetics that is pleasing. I think laying the groundwork is probably important, and then budget it in the future when we have extra money and we're not short employees and trying to retain employees. And
So will UDOT tell us how many lights they're going to give us, or do we have a say in that on 5,600?
Probably on their, I don't know if the mayor's seen the plan, but it's probably shows on there, but I can't imagine it's more than 15.
And we can get that.
can we arm wrestle?
They're hoping to get the information to Matt and I, we believe, in July.
Yeah.
And it's not that we haven't been asking. They promised us, and no fault of their own. There's some challenges they're working through, but they did promise we would have the data in February. Then they said they promised to have it at the end of May. And now the last report we'll have at the end of July. So we will see that, and then we can count those just to get an idea. But the variance between what they're planning to put in, if we don't do anything, anything above that, we would have to pay for. So just recognize if that's something you want to continue. And here's another piece: to put all 100 and some odd lights in there at one time may not necessarily be profitable. We didn't do that here. We started at one end of town and we kind of just went to the other, and it took us 4, 5, 6 years. So you may say, we like the idea of a new light. We're only going to put 10 in. That's all we're going to budget. And then that would give us the direction to go ahead and place 10 along that corridor. Maybe over another 10 years, we may come up enough money to go ahead and get them all in, but at least going in, there would be a very short number that we could afford. But that would be something that would be incorporated in the budget, and then you would have to approve that if we do that. But what I think I heard is that we're all agreed to go ahead and at least lay the infrastructure in to allow the lights in, and then we have something we can work with in the future.
I'd like to know what the cost of that is, and if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And see if that sounds reasonable or feasible, because it sure would be nice to have the option while we're in the middle of it.
Okay.
If that's not like, $750,000 or something,
Yeah.
Yeah, because I like the hometown feel that those lights give the city, and you can hang the flags and the different decorations on them. I think it would look awesome down there, but not if we could get 5 police officers instead. But if we could do just 2 or 3 or 4, a year.
Yeah.
Randomly, and I think it would look nice.
It
But
would. Okay.
you.
Okay, we'll take that as an action and we'll work that. Anything else you want to ask questions on the 50th centered lighting? Everybody okay? Okay, we're going to talk about Community Night at Rodeo. Matt, you want to talk that?
So as you guys know, the mayor and I met with Alan Hall. He is the chair over the Ogden the Ogden Pioneer Days Rodeo. He was asking us if we would like to participate in a Roy City Community Night out at the rodeo on July 21st. It's the Thursday of the rodeo. The pitch is to say that Roy City would purchase 400 tickets at $8. The regular price tickets are $16. And for the other half of that ticket, that we'd go get a sponsor from the community to fund the rest of that portion. With the 400 tickets, we could give to the employees to do different things with. As well as that, they would like to have the city provide a float. And if there's a business in Roy that helps participate in that, they would like to have them provide a float too. They would provide recognition for the city officials to have a dinner before the rodeo as well. And then also make announcements at the rodeo about the community night being with Roy City. So that was kind of the pitch from Alan, but wanted to get a little bit of a direction from the council.
So would that be that if employees wanted to buy tickets, then they could pay the $8 and then somebody magically is getting this other donation? I mean, like, who gets to do the donation?
I guess either or, if we would
supportive?
want to see if the city employees would pay for it or the city pays for it ourselves. I think the idea from Alan was to have the city pay for it and then have the city reach out for other donations.
I find that a lot of times those tickets, because no one really pays for them, they're not really valued very well and they just get left places, but that's my observation.
From a perspective of the employees, we have 150 employees, full-time staff members. We have, during the summertime, we do have the aquatic center. So you reach a little over 200 employees during the summer, given the fact that if we had every employee go with a significant other or even more so than that, the 400 tickets would be a little hard for us to get, I don't want to say to get rid of, but to use.
Is that 400 negotiable? Like, can we
Yeah, I
do
think-
200?
I think he just put that out there as
Okay.
400. Yep. And this is something else, something that the mayor talked about with the other mayors. I don't know what their take was on that, but I think he is going to reach out to other cities to see if, so it's not just Roy City participating potentially.
Have we done this before?
No.
I like a good rodeo, but and I usually go to that one. I just don't know if I want to buy 400 tickets to it.
It's just
What
so
did the
hard
other-
because
what did
most
the other mayors think? Mayor?
Well, I mentioned it to him, asked him if they'd like to talk to Mr. Hall relative to the details that he can work out similar to what he was trying to work out with Roy. I says, contact Alan. If not, I can make that connection between the two of them. And then the other IP piece is that, do they want to put something in the parade? I mentioned to Alan, we may have a new fire truck.
Yeah.
We definitely have a newer fire truck that could be in there. And that may be something we talked about, that we could go ahead and support the parade by just having our fire truck and ambulance in that parade representing Roy City. And I think that's a wonderful idea. Well, I don't think it'd be much of a cost, except it'll take some resources. But more importantly, there's a lot of people in Roy who watches. About 70,000 people will be on that parade route. And having a Roy asset, with our team players in there, would be a kind of nice show that says we're supporting the broader community. So to me, I think if we can get a fire truck in, that's a great thing. The question you need to ask is that maybe we only have 100 people in Roy City employees that are interested. We can surely take a poll. And if only 100 people, then just figure out 100 people. And that's what we support. So just anything you'd like to do. The only thing we need from you would be is that we could take some of the funding out of our budget. We have a legislative budget that is somewhat discretionary, and you could basically allow the employees to attend this rodeo. help them. I mean, they got to put their part into the plan, but you can surely say, well, if you're willing to pay into it, we're willing to support it, and you can basically get a ticket and join into that activity. I don't think we'll ever get 400.
Right.
But we could get 50, could get 80. We could probably get a few that have an interest and they enjoy going to the rodeo, and this would be an opportunity to do so.
So I believe that it's great to have the $8, but the employees need to pay that $8. And this is like an opportunity, a connection that they have. And then I'm wondering who's in charge of getting the donors for the other half. And if we don't get the donors, does that mean the deal's off? And who gets the monkey on the back for that part?
I'm going to piggyback what she said. I would almost rather, if we're going to blow our silver bullet on a donor or something, I'd rather put it into the Roy Days and maybe even take any money that we would allocate and do something for all the hard work that our employees put into Roy Days. That's my food for thought, is put the money into our own celebration.
Well,
Not
the
saying I
interesting,
don't support it and it's not a great cause. It is, because I support that one, but
yeah, the challenge we have with Roy Days, and it's always a challenge, is it's the employees that run Roy Days. They are stacked and they do a great job.
that's what I say. Do we take some money and do something for the employees for other work of Roy Days?
Well, and this is a
versus-
case where they can go watch a rodeo, because that way they don't have to participate in it. They just sit back with an individual and enjoy that rodeo. I mean, there's no involvement on part of Roy City employees to the rodeo. They just have to attend. Unlike Roy Days, which, and I'll tell you, nothing would please me more to have more residential volunteerism, if we can weave that into the Roy Days as much as possible, because a lot of our people spend an awful lot of time and energy taking care of that event. And that's just not a one-day event. That's kind of an all-week event, and there's a lot of moving parts. So it's kind of what you'd like to see. There's no commitment here, but if you think there might be something here, we can surely pursue that.
So does that mean that the deal's off if we don't get the donor for the other half? Or can we proceed offering this? Because that is a benefit for the citizen, for the employees, to say, yeah, you can buy half price tickets. That's pretty cool. But then is the deal off if we don't have a sponsor to cover the other half?
In my opinion, Matt, it would just basically suggest Roy City has to step up on the discretionary funds and have to fill that square.
I don't know if I feel good about that part then.
That would be the only thing. If we can't get a donor to basically pay that other half, Roy City would be on the nickel to pay for that. And if it's 50 people, the bottom line is going to be is Roy City has to come with $400.
Matt, I got a question for you.
Are you going to just do a survey then, ask employees and departments, try to get a count of who would maybe go to the rodeo? Or
If that was something that the city council would want to entertain, I do think it would be pretty difficult for the 400 tickets. We were
Me
talking
too.
internally
Mhm.
with the department heads, and some departments felt like they could get a couple of people out there, but the 400, not even close. So.
right, I just know Alan Hall's been such a big supporter of Roy forever and done so much for our community. I just think we should try to do something, even if it's 50 or 100 tickets, to try to support him, because he's over the rodeo. And I mean, obviously, we're not going to do 400 tickets, but I think we, should look into it, and then maybe try to look for some donors also too. I mean, I can
Yeah.
always ask a few people.
Have you thought about that, Matt? I mean, I'm sure you've already tried to figure out, is it going to be hard for us to try to get $400? Like, because I would help.
$400, it's 400 tickets, which.
No, not
$3,200.
tickets, because I don't want to do 400 tickets, but like to do.
Yeah, and to be quite honest, like during that time is also when Roy City is reaching out to our vendors, to citizens for other people about the Roy Days
Mhm.
contributions. And so it puts us in a little bit of a predicament there if we ask them to double dip or what. I think with this and Roy Days, when a vendor comes in and they do donate for Roy Days, there's a lot into it for them as well. Like Waste Management, they come out and they really like that symbolism that they care about the community, because they do care about the community and they want to participate in these types of events. That's why they do the Easter egg hunt. Likewise with this, there's a little bit into it for that that's where Ellen was going with it, that they get a sign at the rodeo. It's for advertisement. So when you talk about that, it's a little bit of a fee for advertisement, not necessarily a fee for Roy City employees to go to the event. But I'll be honest, it'd be a little hard to go out and get vendors to try to do both when we already have them participating in Roy Days.
Okay, and do you know if this is because of the participation in the rodeos? Are they trying to like fill up stands, or this is new?
Yeah, this is completely new, just a new idea that they came across. But so I don't know the participation. We didn't get into any of that.
I love the
information, so.
idea of having our employees be able to purchase a ticket for $8. I love that idea. I don't know how comfortable I am with the city paying for the additional $8. So is there a way we can approach him and say,
Yeah, we could.
can we?
We could have that
I
conversation.
love the opportunity to let them have that if they choose to go. And I think it's a little more valuable. You pay $8, you're going to show up. You get 2 tickets from the city.
Mhm.
It's going to stick on the fridge and you're going to be like, oh yeah, that was last night.
Good point.
You act like you're talking from experience.
Yeah.
Well, okay, council, how would you like us to proceed?
So I'm wondering, could we get an idea of what the interest is? How hard is that? I mean, if you put an email out, and how, would people be thinking that they're committed just to get an interest idea, and, or, maybe Anne has some connections for people that would be willing to do it? Or, I mean, how hard is it to
Yeah.
get the interest
We could put a
idea?
survey out just to say, would you be willing to go for free? Would you be willing to go for $8?
Don't put free on there because
Yeah, I say don't put free.
They're not going to check.
Just take that away.
Yeah.
We could.
Right,
I
no
think
free.
we call that
Interested
publicly
in-
funded. Is that right, Mr. Homer?
Thank you. No free.
And what's our time frame? Is there like a deadline we have to have?
He didn't really tell us that. So
Okay.
Mhm.
Just the 24th is so
I'm-
hard because most people go out of town camping too. So I know, but it's on a Thursday and usually a lot of
Yeah.
people leave Thursday to go camping. So, yeah.
Mm.
Okay, here's what I think with the takeaway, if you're okay that, we'll go out there and see if we can't get sponsor support, see who might be interested in supporting that. And second is that since it does involve Roy City employees, we'll do a little a survey to interest to see how many of our Roy employees may have an interest in wanting to participate. Are you okay with that, council? Bring that back to the council and then we can basically flush this out.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. 2 action items. Anything else, council, on that topic?
Actually, so is there like an assignment of someone who is looking for, I mean, Anne, you kind of volunteered. Is that something you feel good about, trying to see if there was someone that would be willing to sponsor that, or?
Well, it depends on how much money we talking. We haven't figured that out
Okay.
yet.
Well, I think
right.
if, Matt, if the first thing we can do is just ask our employees if they have an interest. And if it's 50 people have an interest, then the dollar amount for 50 is going to be $8 times 50. And that'll give you kind of the number we're looking at. So we say, hey, we're looking for somebody to donate maybe $400 to this effort to put our employees into the rodeo.
I think that's a
It
good
might be a
approach.
minimum in order to have a banner up.
yeah,
I worked with Alan Hall years ago and we charged $500 a banner for the Roy High football.
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it's gone up now, but he ain't gonna put a banner up for,
get 50 tickets sold. Yeah, I
right.
agree with that.
So.
We just have to flush that out. Good point.
Good point. Thank you. We'll start that way and then we'll know what steps to
Okay.
take next.
Thank you. Travis, you're going to talk about water usage.
Did $500 per banner for the football team. We raised $28,000.
Mayor and members of council, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. We've all realized that it wasn't as good a snowpack year as any of us had hoped. Mayor, Councilman Jackson, I read your articles in the newsletter, and we wanted to come here tonight to discuss expectations and maybe give you our thoughts on water this year as a city. We're going to talk about several different things, from fountains and splash pads, the park strips, non-sports green space, and sporting fields. We might as well start at splash pads and fountains. Several cities around us have already made the decision not to turn theirs on. There's several cities that are discussing it tonight. I can tell you their recommendation is the same as ours, which is, as hard as this is going to be and as unfun as it is, we would recommend not to turn on the splash pad or our fountains this year. It's going to be a challenge. You know, we understand people like it. It's why we built them, you know, but the amount of water that is being used on them is massive. Non-sports spaces, we'd call them more recreational, where you're not going to play an athletic event. Our objective would be to water them at a minimum to keep the grass alive, but not flourishing. You know, we don't want to necessarily be plush and green and things like that. But we do have quite a few areas that are that way. Park strips, it would be our recommendation. We talked a couple months ago about funding for Xeriscape and some other things. Park strips are wasted water space. I mean, let's just be honest of what they are. You can't have a picnic there. You can't play a game there. They're wasted. We would like, as a group, not even to water them. I mean, frankly speaking, we don't even water them. This would allow us to water our athletic fields more. This would allow us to keep them safe. They're not even going to be green and flourish like they normally would. And when I say athletic fields, it's important, you know, because I have a feeling we're all going to get emails and phone calls this summer of watering and things like that. We have to water dirt too. I mean, and I just want you guys to understand that part of keeping an athletic field safe, especially when you're talking baseball, softball, t-ball, coach pitch, that whole family, is dirt. You know, we have to maintain those dirt areas as well.
I have a quick question, Travis.
Please.
Is your park strips on separate systems than the rest of the, I mean, is it going to be a lot of work to separate them?
I've talked with the park superintendent, and there'll be a little bit of, you know, how certain things go, where you're going to get a little bit of an overlap, but very little. We think we'll have the ability to isolate a lot of them and shut them down.
So you just let the park strips die, but just keep them mowed and they'll just be dead grass.
Dead grass. And we understand, frankly speaking, that it changes the whole way we do maintenance. There's going to be far more spraying. There's going to be far more weed spraying. There's going to be far more mowing. There's going to be far more aeration. There's going to be different ways of fertilization. We understand that. We understand that we have a different reality right now, you know, and we're very confident, but by doing this, we can save hundreds of thousands, if not million gallons of water this year, you know, and it's hard. We as a city are very blessed to have very dedicated employees that have a lot of pride in what they do. And it doesn't make them feel good to see it not as green, that to see some stress spots, to see, you know, stuff mixed in, but we also understand the importance of it. You know, we understand the importance of water and everything involved with it. That's our plan. Now it's time for you guys to tell us what your thoughts to that plan are. If you have a different vision of that, and we can go forward. Perfect.
Thank you, Travis. Okay, council, here's what he's recommending. Just a recap, not to turn on the fountains and the splash pad. Control, obviously, no water going to the park strips. The water that we do have allocation will be directed primarily to keep the sports fields safe, and they have to be watered. So we'll maintain those. What are your thoughts?
I think no splash pad, and then maybe more people go to the aquatic center. Because we've got to have the aquatic center. We're still going to have the aquatic center, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was a question.
You're just
One of
giving me a
those
funny look there.
uncomfortable delays.
And we are fortunate in Royce City that we do have two bodies of water outside of the splash pad for our residents and people to use.
And maybe that will increase, you know, attendance there. So our fountains, there's the one in front of Harmon's. Where else do we have a fountain?
There's one, and frankly speaking, even if you guys said turn on fountains, there's so many issues with the one over by, used to be Village Inn, now it's So Delicious.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
so many issues with that fountain. The amount we'd have to invest in it, knowing what's going to happen on that road it's not smart economically.
Yeah,
I wouldn't put money into it because UDOT's gonna rip it out.
right.
Correct.
Yeah, I just think if you just make what we have look good and nice and tidy and weed free and mowed, and I just think, know,
And
that's just the best that we can do.
And the truth is, the looking good's going to be the challenging part, and that's what I want you guys to be comfortable with, because it's not up to our typical standards. I don't think it can be with especially back-to-back years of water.
Exactly.
Last year was really hard, and our grass isn't as healthy. And the best way to prevent weeds and different things like that is to have healthy turf. And it's not as healthy as it was last year. And it's going to be a challenge. And there will be times this year, because it's a trial and error process for us as well. There are going to be times this year that things might look too green, or other times this year that you say, oh, we better get a little more water on that because that area we're losing it. But they're not going to look plush like they have been. And I think it's important you guys understand that, because I know we're going to get phone calls and emails, and I know you are too, and as long as we're all on the same page and say, hey, we're trying to lead by example here. And yes, it doesn't look up to our standards, but we're trying to do our part to conserve water, which is the truth. I mean, we don't have to run from it. It's the truth.
What do you do on spraying weeds where the grass isn't healthy? I'm just looking out at our nice yellow flowers in the front lawn.
No, there's no doubt. And now that water was turned on by Roy Secondary Water yesterday. They have not turned the pumps on or anything at that point in time. We began the process over the last couple of weeks of spraying. We've also added weed and feed and different things at this point in time. The broadleaf stuff we don't like to put down until we get water, in case it got really, really hot and we could potentially lose
Kill
some
the grass,
grass, so some of that's going to be coming in the near future.
So down on the 4,800 roundabout, so you're going to fill the smaller little pieces in with cement like you did on 4,000.
Yep, we're working on that on 4,000 as we speak.
And then
the
what
Harmon's
about,
one?
and then what about on the west, all the dandelions on the little west on that turnabout? Are you going to put cement in there or leave that grass?
Right now, there's no plans of putting cement on there.
Is that something you'll let die then, right there?
That's
or-
an area that we would definitely let struggle significantly.
Well, that was such a politically way to answer that.
What about the Harmon's one? Have you?
Harmon's, we talked last time, and I believe there's still funding in the budget for Desert Escape stuff. Those projects we talked about last time, Harmon's, Riverdale Road, our building are included. Whatever we have left over, we're just going to keep going. We're just going to keep going.
Okay, so what's on the table, council, is that are you okay with him basically shutting off the fountains and the splash pad?
Yes.
How much money are we saving?
It's not necessarily.
The money
money.
is
Any
the
money?
water.
Yeah, I
Is
wouldn't,
there any
I
money
wouldn't
in-
say there's a financial savings
Because
to-
of the
to any of
equipment?
this.
Yearly maintenance on the splash pad?
No, I wouldn't anticipate if anything, it would be very minimal on the financial savings on it.
Okay. Council, you okay with those two? You'll need to put a sign out and notify the people who go to the splash pad that will be closed then.
Yeah, we will begin as early as tomorrow, especially the people that have rented the Bowery at George Wallen Park.
Yeah.
Of letting them know. And thank you for your time.
Do you want to get us an
Thank you.
email that we can just a template that we can?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Do you want to give us an email, a template that we can just forward on to residents that are
Yeah,
complaining?
yeah, sure. We
I
can do that.
can't imagine people, they all know what situation we're in, even though I've
Exactly.
seen a few
Yeah.
really plush green lawns in the city.
I was surprised to see water going this morning, driving up 5,600. It's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah,
Just
as
turned it
much
on
as it
yesterday and
rained.
people are already
Yeah.
watering in the rainstorm.
Yeah.
So did we make the decision to let the park strips die? Is that everywhere?
That's
Yes.
city property, right?
I
Right,
mean,
you're gonna-
yes,
yeah,
I
city's talking.
can't speak on residential property. I'm
Well,
just
no,
talking
but
about-
I'm talking city buildings, parks.
Well, yeah, I mean, that would be our plan. Yes, is park strips to
Okay,
let them
Rick.
go.
Council, you okay? Because he's going with that direction.
Brown's the new color.
No, I don't like it.
Can I say something, Travis? The fact of the matter is that the municipality has to lead by example. The residents don't make a distinction between the water districts or doesn't make a distinction between county or city. They see it as government. And the fact of the matter is, we're going to restrict our residents to one watering a week all this month, and no more than 2 waterings a week going into the hot part of the summer. Some people are going to lose lawn. It's just going to happen. And if we're going to get a complaint, council, it's going to be a complaint when they go up there and says, look how beautiful the city parks are. They're wasting water. And then find out that we basically are forcing them. Government is forcing them to not allow their trees and their watering, to be limited. We can't do that to them. The thing you have to tell them is we are actively engaged in this conservation effort, and we're going to lead by example. And that means we're going to have some spots that are going to be brown, and we're not going to turn our fountains on. We're just going to show them how it's going to get done. And I think if we take that positive approach, I think the majority of the residents will understand and they will rally around us because we're taking the pain to this as well. So I like what you're planning, Counselor. Are you supportive of Travis's recommendation going forward?
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm going to piggyback on that. It might not be the right place and I might get kicked under the table, but there's been a lot of discussion about flip your strip. A lot of phone calls coming into the city, a lot of things like that. I've talked to a lot of people from other cities, other municipalities, and I think we have to be very cautious because a lot of residents, I believe, have a misconception of what flip your strip is. I've talked to a lot of contractors that are booked up all summer long, ripping out park strips and putting in rocks. That's not flip your strip. That flip your strip has plants, it has shrubbery, it has watering systems, drip systems involved in it. And so I think people need to be aware that what it's really going to cost you to flip your strip is not the rebate that you're going to get for flip your strip. You're going to have to invest some money to get rid of that. And I think there's a misconception out there that I'm going to rip my grass out, I'm going to put rock in, and I'm going to get money from Weber Basin for it.
Well, as we talked last time, or a couple months ago when the conversation happened, the flip your strip was kind of designed for the average park strip was going to be like $3 is what the kind of rebate would be. Most contractors are charging 7 to 10. I mean, to back your point up.
Well, I know my friend texted me and said that Riverdale City was giving them an incentive and money to do flip their strip. So she says, I live in Roy. Are we going to do an incentive and some money?
I can't speak on that. I actually don't know
Yeah,
anything about
because
that.
I've had so many calls about flip your strip too, that they think that they can just do it and we're paying for it. I think there's just a misconception about what it is.
I don't think they realize they have to go to a class and
Yeah.
that there has to be foliage and plants and a drip system and all that's expensive.
Well, I've had 2 people around the corner from me that just ripped out everything out and put rocks in.
Yeah. I'm not saying I'm against it,
Yeah.
but I just want people to understand that there's more to the program
Right.
than what we see at face value.
Right.
Correct.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Travis. Okay, youth council application intentions. Sophie.
So you all have been given a youth council application. I would like to get this started and email this to, I have the contacts at each school and then have the applications due in and back by June 3rd. Out and available before they go, before they leave school. And then sometime after that, I'd like to get together and do, gather the applications, gather phone numbers and do a kind of a group meet and see where they want to go with this, see what goals, activities, the projects they want to lead. how often they want to meet, because as far as meat and potatoes, I can't give that until I meet with the groups and see what they want. So I thought this is a great way to start and get on board with the the high school and the junior highs, a couple homeschool, with not leaving anybody out, but kind of putting it out there, maybe using the Instagram and just saying, this is what's available, and kind of run.
And the
How many people
budget
are you looking for?
for like the t-shirts and stuff like that, that's coming from,
So they have a couple different things. We have a council. What do you,
It's the legislative budget. It's funding that the council has with Matt to be able to do discretionary projects. And so, for an example, over the years, the legislators have voted to offer YCC, for an example, who has been an intaker of family abuse issues, and we've allocated some money to support YCC. So it's a discretionary budget that you have where you can use that money for different things. You use that money to feed the football teams, I believe. We use that money sometimes for awards for the employees. So it has some flexibility that you control.
okay, so for the first year, that's probably what I would do, but I do know there are grants available, and I have some connections with a few people that could help me write some grants and get, it's minimal cost. I don't think anything this year is going to be too much. I would be happy with 10 to 12 kids. If we were talking 50 plus, then it might be a little different, but I would be ecstatic with 10. So I don't see a huge cost or budget. And a few of my ideas start out with maybe some Roy Days stuff. I don't know what else the city does in
You're
the
getting a
summer.
youth council to volunteer, or is it just for the kids, kind of like a Boys and Girls Club thing, just to
No,
help them? Or is
No,
it
it's going to be more of a youth council to where they kind of decide what they want to do and what their goals and activities they want to. I kind of have Nevaeh over with it, like,
But like, say they want to go on a field trip. So does this
Oh.
fund that? That's what
you're taking them on a field trip.
or you're going to have them.
I don't think that would be. I don't think,
Okay.
yeah, I don't think it is. I think it's
Okay.
more service goals. I think,
That's what
yeah,
I'm-
being a part of the community, these are your future leaders type thing. I don't think it could be a field trip. Like it could be, go down to the capital type thing. I know there's several cities around that do pretty big events, but they have a lot of members, a lot. They meet like every week. I was thinking like once a quarter.
and this is something that you sponsor, so you're like the youth council leader that kind of meets with them and, organizes and makes sure that they're okay and that whatever we need for.
Yes.
Yes and no. As together, but invite everybody, like, you know what I mean? Like to have everybody come. Randy had even said, let me know if you do a meeting. I would totally come. And I was like, oh, that's exactly, yeah, I wouldn't expect everyone to come all the time, but yes.
Okay.
But just recognize the Open Meetings Act still applies. We
Mhm.
put 3 of you in the same room, okay? Then
Oh,
it's
so do we do
considered a
2?
quorum. All you can have is 2.
Two of so yeah,
Should go to all of them. That's the way I
yeah,
look
no.
at it.
Not all your ideas are good ideas.
Well, I like it because I think Sophie's point is that you now have a group of young men, young women who have a vested interest in Roy City and may have a voice on issues.
Mhm.
And if you want to talk about, hey, we're thinking about doing this in this park, or we're thinking about doing that, what does that youth council think? And it may very well be, they'll bring up some interesting perspectives that maybe we as adults may not necessarily think about, or think about long-term commitments that we oftentimes don't think about, but it's really important to them because they'll be the ones living with those. And so it's just a group of people that I think we have lost a connectivity in terms of local government that we can now bring in and offer them an opportunity to have a voice. And I'm excited. I couldn't be more pleased. So I guess the key would be, council, do you have any questions or comments about this application form that's being proposed?
I would like to get it out before school. So I think if we wait till after school, we've missed it.
Exactly.
So
And so this would be a
So-
yearly thing. And so
Yeah.
just at the end of the year, you'd have them apply so they could be involved for the summer and the following year.
Mhm.
And once they're out of high school, then
They're
Like
done.
that's it.
ages
Mhm.
12 to 18? Is that what you're
I was
looking at?
hoping for like 15 to
15
18.
to 18?
Right. I don't want
Okay.
littles.
Yeah.
At first, I really think we
15
kind
to
of.
18, so high school age.
Mm-hmm.
And how many of these are you going to give us that we're supposed to find?
Well,
How many
well,
people?
it's not really a find. I actually have reached out to the schools and I have contacts within each one of them. And I just said, give me the people that maybe ran for office, maybe didn't make it, they want to be involved, they want to, they're interested. And maybe start with that, because I know that the presidents and the student body officers themselves, they're super busy. They don't have time for more. So
start with invitation.
yeah,
basically.
invitation, not as a whole. Like, I don't want it to go mass email through the school. I just had kind of contacted each one of the student governor or student gov teachers and said, can you help me get this to a handful? And I'd like to get, until we get 2 from every school.
And then, are you, so we have one Roy High School, so just our high school, and you're not doing.
Sandridge.
You said 15, so I guess that would be ninth
Ninth?
graders then.
No, well, if I can get 2 from each school, and then I have a couple homeschool people that have contacted me and said they'd be interested. So I say schools just because that's where I would start, and then I would kind of branch out from there.
So you're only looking at like maybe 8 or 12
10.
kids, right? 10
Yeah, I'd be
kids right
happy
now.
with 10. Mhm.
But what if more kids want to be involved?
Then I guess we do it.
How it goes, I guess that's the application.
Yeah,
process.
that
That's
really
why
is
you're
how
doing
the application process goes, because I don't know.
And you'll interview them to make sure they're the type of people you want on there, depending on what they want on their application, or I'm just.
As a whole, I think I would give it to everybody. I don't know that I would. Yeah.
Just see how many applications.
I
you
don't
get
think we're
back
gonna
and
get
select
bombarded.
What you think is a good representation from the schools from the applications provided.
Yeah. And if they recommend it from the schools, I'm really not going to question. So.
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of opportunity in this because I think the people on this council can work with the student government too. Like we can, I would be willing to even just let them know of the schedule of Roy High thing so that they could come too. We always need more people to show up and support. And also organizing a youth event in the summer. I think that would be cool. And I think that this council could oversee that in a way. So
yep,
I'll tell people about this for sure.
Okay.
Great comments.
So I'm okay to send an email or the emails with the applications to the student gov.
Sounds good.
Everybody okay?
While
Okay.
we're, oops, sorry, 1 second. While we're on the topic of this, I did want to say Instagram to make sure that there is still what should I do from here about having the,
We can just have a conversation.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it needed to be official right now. So
Yeah, anytime we basically get in that social media, process, please kind of direct that with Matt so we make
Okay.
sure that we're all okay with all that, okay?
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. I think you got a green light to go, Sophie. So good luck and we're excited to get a report on that. Okay, council, we submitted a 2022 Utah Legislative House Bill 146. Apologize that there's 36 pages. Local licensing. Let me just preface how this all come about because I normally don't do this. The legislators passed 512 bills this year. The report we got was 70% of the 512 have some impact to cities. I don't know how we could ever waddle through all of that kind of stuff. I monitored 30 bills. The Utah League of Cities and Town monitored, I think, 164 bills. And at the end of the day, the only reason why this one caught my attention, because Governor Cox he allowed, I think, 3 bills or 4 bills to actually go without signature. So they became law without signature, and it surprised me. All the bills that I was watching that did get through him were signatures except this one. And I said to myself, I says, why didn't he sign this? He did not sign this. It just went into law. He has that authority. And so I said, well, I'm just going to take a deep dive. And I apologize because I gave you 36 pages of deep dive. And I apologize. I put a summary on it. I just wanted you to kind of see. But I assume you looked through it. There's some interesting nuances to it. I just want to kind of get your thoughts and where we go from here based on what you've read. Any comments? Any questions about what the data is telling you? And do you have any comments about how we proceed with it?
Maybe I can just jump in and ask Andy, if you don't mind, in regards to this information, is there something we really need to do as a council? Is this something that will kind of automatically happen because we have to comply anyway? Maybe maybe you can give us your idea of what our next step should be.
Okay, with the business licensing, in that aspect, I want to
Oh,
address
put the
other-
microphone so people can hear you. Thanks.
Yeah, because 146 does handle other things too, but just in relation to the business licensing part. And I'm sorry if I sound a little funny, I'm wearing Invisalign, so bear with me, okay?
We never
But,
noticed.
Our code, and I've got it here, it just says that everybody who does business in the city shall have a business license unless they're exempt. And so then when you go down to our exemption section, it provides exemptions for anything that's exempt under state or federal law. So one good way about doing it that way is we don't have to constantly go back in and have to add or change things. And we do that in different areas of the code too. So, and there are a lot of things like, let's take our Utah Criminal Code. We adopt Utah Criminal Code, what it is. We don't specifically go in and spell out everything in there, which is kind of nice because we don't have to constantly go back and, add to that with, well, Brody, there's probably at least 200 crimes in there that we would have to constantly update. We might have, so we have that provision in there that anything that's under state or federal law is exempt, okay? I think there's been a little confusion maybe here with this, with 146, it's talking about the fees. It's not saying you're exempt from licensing. It says you're exempt for fees. And the only part of 146 that says you're exempt for a licensing, that's when you're dealing with the 18-year-olds. So that's the only place they specifically put that. Everywhere else, they said you're exempt from fees. And then they have that language in there about when that comes into play. So I don't think that we're in violation of anything. We do have, we made some changes to our form, and I think we've got that online right now to, have that help out. I think the language that they've used in the state law, when you look at that and it's talking about impacts that materially affect, that's one of those legal terms that quite often you're going to have to wait for a judge to determine how that is. And we'll make administrative decisions on how that should be. If some of these things come into Tammy, quite often she'll come to Brody or myself and say, hey, what do we do with this? And so it's really hard for us to go out too and try to come up and put something in the code that determines what's material, because every situation may be different. So we're going to have to look at those on a case-by-case basis to determine who should or who shouldn't do that. So, but if you have more questions on that, please ask me. I know I'm being kind of brief and short, but.
So what I hear you saying is that because we have a code that's somewhat open-ended and has verbiage that says we support the state, then we don't have to be changing the writing in it a lot.
Right. We don't have to do that. Now, some of these other things where it's pointed out that they've changed it. Our old code used to say if you were 16 and under, operating a business, it's occasional, you don't have to have a license. The state did change that and made it 18 and under. So we will change that. I think it goes into effect on the 8th. But as long as we're not going out and enforcing something that maybe is in our books or on our ordinance, we're not going to be liable for that. And as the mayor mentioned, there's all kinds of laws that get passed that have an impact on us. And there's so many of them. But as long as we don't violate that law that's been passed, even though our book may say something else, then, there's no liability. We haven't done anything wrong. So that happens. You'll see things when I went through the business licensing code back a year ago, February, there were some things in there that had to be taken out. But they had been in there for a while too. And it was one of the projects that I had wanted to work on for quite a while. during COVID, I had that opportunity. So that was helpful, but there were things in there that needed to be changed that maybe weren't how state law was at that time, but as long as we weren't enforcing that, there wasn't a problem. So, and I wanted to point out one thing too. I think there's been a problem in our code, and I think the mayor may have mentioned that, where it talks about revenue. None of these are supposed to be for raising revenue. So, and that was in the ordinance that was provided back about a year and a half ago. But for some reason that didn't transfer into the code. Other parts of it were picked up, but that part hasn't. So we're going to go back in and we're going to make sure that that gets in there.
So I have a question about a home-based business. If somebody has a home-based business, medical transcribing or something like that, they're solely home-based, nothing outward facing, is that something they have to get a business license for?
No fee, but they're supposed to get a license for that. Okay. State law says that cities may impose licenses, okay, for business in their city. So that's what we've done. I think most cities do that. The city could come back and say, hey, we're not going to license home-based businesses. There's a lot of licenses.
I think you have to be careful when you say home-based businesses because they spread the gamut on what they are. Are they fully self-contained to where there's nothing ever outward facing? A home-based business might be a business that receives FedEx packages all day long. Well, those FedEx drivers are running up and down our road. Or if it's a business where people are coming in to pay fees or stuff like that to a business, that's attracting more traffic than the house would.
Mm-hmm. Right. So when it materially, sorry, the L's and S's are really tough, but when it materially impacts the residential more than what the regular would, that's when we can charge a fee. Outside of that, we can't charge a fee. So if somebody's running that business, there aren't cars going in and out of there all the time, or that.
FedEx drivers, a drop.
Yeah, then we don't. So, but what's so difficult sometimes about these laws, it's really hard to define. And so that's when it comes into typically the lawyers to try and make decisions on that. And then if there's a legal battle over it, it's really the judge who's going to determine what's material and what isn't.
Thank you.
And to add to that confusion, if you remember, Council, I asked you to read the book that Steve basically sent us, which is the Ground Rules for Handbook. And this author basically has interpreted on page 150. I ask you to read. It simply says, he says, licensing fees may not be collected from a home-based business that imposes no burden on the municipality than a home would impose. And so you kind of ask the hard question, does a 2-3-year-olds being dropped off at a daycare center create any burden, okay, on the municipality because they're going to a daycare? No, it's.
So I read it, and that's exactly what I was asking Andy. So it says licensing fees may not be collected from a home-based business that imposes no more burden on the municipality than a home would.
Right.
I'm thinking of somebody that runs a daycare that maybe they have 2 different shifts. And so they have 10 mothers coming in at one morning, and then they pick them up and they got 10 mothers. And then the next shift, they've got 10 mothers, and the next shift, they've got 10 mothers. So now all of a sudden you've got 40 trips across the road that house would not normally generate if they didn't have the business there. Or the other thing, like I was talking about, you see some of these businesses that are solely, they do mail order deliveries. So now you've got packaging trucks going there constantly dropping off stuff. Another business I can think of, they do rental properties. And so there are people coming constantly to their house, dropping off payments and stuff like that.
Correct.
Where if they weren't running that business out of their house, would you generate that much traffic on their road going to that place?
Well, that's a good question. If you read some of the examples I gave you, some municipalities put a limit and says if you have more than 10 of those drop-bys in a day, then they simply says you got to have a business license and pay the fee. And that makes sense because it is in fact, they're kind of criterion, if you would establish a criteria, what justifies normal usage versus that of a real business use. And so that's how they try to, in a sense, capture what they see as a difference between a no-fee municipal, no-fee home-based business and that which is really running a business. And let's face it, some businesses may need have a business license. There may be insurance requirements that says, I've got to have a license from the city to allow me to operate my business. And so they will do that. The challenge would be is that unless there's something in the fee schedule that I'm not aware of, we don't charge an administrative fee. Even though the law basically allows us to have an administrative fee, we don't charge one. So the only thing that city could do is simply says, if they meet the exemption requirement, we issue you a license that keeps you legal, okay? But there's no fee. But there is administrative requirements to be able to process that license, and we're just eating that cost. And that may be okay. Or as the law basically says, maybe you need to also take whatever administrative costs it would be to process that non-fee license. And that's okay as well.
So have we been challenged by any or we've been challenged by any home-based
Can we
business?
step back just a little bit on, I wanted to comment on a couple of things here. One thing though, if you look at the statement that was made in the book, what it's saying, it's not saying that you don't have to get a license, it's saying you don't have to pay a fee. So
That's right.
So it's not saying that at all. It's just no fee that meets that. And that's how we look at it. That's how we interpret it. That's how we treat it here. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that and make sure, because I think sometimes we're getting confused with you have to have a license or you have, and state law is just saying no fee in that circumstance.
So have we been challenged by any home-based business that we've collected money on a business license and they didn't feel like they should need one?
Not that I've seen, but Tammy, have we ever been challenged? Yeah. And one thing I'd like to say in addition to that too, we had hired Lewis, Birmingham and Young, and you've probably all been to their, seen their place down at Utah League of Cities and Towns, but they're an expert on setting fees, and they do a study with us, and they come and interview and they try to figure out what our costs are so that we do it accurate and so that we can legally support any kind of challenge. So they currently have that still. And I mean, they have a lot of stuff going. We used them in the past too, when we were looking at disproportionate business shares. And that's what we do. So if that helps you guys kind of understand how that works.
Well, I know I've ran a home-based business since 1989 in Huntamy. I can pay my fee. And so I had to have a business license in order for those companies to sell me goods and for me to pay my quarterly taxes. I had to prove that I, had a license. So what is that? $50? That's the fee. I mean, what does that all go to?
Well, and that's a good question. Here's really the structure of the intent of the 36-page document, which just simply says, I don't know why they changed the law. I mean, this is crazy, because if you think about it, we've always had licensing and attached a fee to it because we have to process that license. And so it just seemed like inherently normal. If you want to have a business in Roy, you do that. But in 2016, they come in and basically said, first, you can't charge any licensing, fee. And then they come back in 2017 in the law and says, no, we're going to change that. You can't charge any fee. That's what the law says. It's not whether you put a license in that or not. And you're trying to figure out why did the legislators pass a law to do that? And if you read the document from the Utah League of Cities and Town director, he come back and he basically said, he says there was an effort on the part of legislators to get the municipalities and the counties out of this home-based business licensing fee process. Just get them out of it, because they believe there really is no impact, to the municipality for them to exist. And so as you read through the place in North Ogden and South Ogden and Centerville and Ogden, you start to see where they started interpolating, if you will, what they really intent of the legislators. And they have just an interesting thing, a whole myriad of different things, from tracking how many people they basically have come on a daily basis to issues about you can't have any external modifications, to your facility to accommodate this, or any outside storage. And so they really try to get their arms around it. And of course, Cameron come back, as you read in there, simply says, most cities simply says, we don't charge it. We charge no fee for home-based businesses. That's what he said. Because most of the cities are saying is, it's just too hard to manage this rather difficult, language that they wrote in here. If nothing else, somebody ought to go back to the legislature and says, clean up your language. Because even if you read our law, here's what our law says. And I'm surprised that the state legislature don't have the similar law. Municipal Code 1-3-1, that's our code, says this. Under construction of words, all words and phrases shall be constructed and understood according to the common use and understanding of the language. Who uses words like materially, when in fact, if you read the definition of material, it talks about significant, okay? It means significant. So if what you do is you take the home-based business and the living residential business or home, and there's a significant difference than what the residential is, that constitutes the fee. That's what it really means. But I asked the hard questions as trying to understand this and trying to find some sanity to this. How does 3 children being dropped off, at a house that requires that they have a license paid fee because they got daycare impact anything? Unless we want to say they have a little bit more food, maybe in the refrigerator, or maybe they flush the toilet a little bit more often. How does 3 small children today constitute, if you will, impact? And I can't make that distinction.
One thing I'd say on that, part of city government, we want to make sure that things are safe for our citizens. So let's take daycare. You'd want that inspection to make sure that, and so that means somebody's got to be out there. So there should be a fee to recover our expenses of doing that. And I think maybe what they're trying to do is say for a lot of these things, they don't impact the city. Somebody's working from home. We shouldn't have to charge them.
Right.
And so then it becomes the tough part is going, what affects it and how deep? Administratively, we got to play ball and try and figure that out. I think sometimes if you go in and put some certain language in there, like certain cities, what's the difference between 9 and 10 or 10 and 11?
I don't know.
And there may be other factors that come into play too.
Yeah.
You've got to, so sometimes it creates even more of a problem,
Right.
even though we're dealing with that language from the state. So
That's right.
you know,
Andy, you're
that's-
absolutely correct. It forces municipalities to find these, what appears to be differentiators to try to make a distinction and make it common sense. And we find out they're making it more confusing. And we create the problem when we in fact add more confusion to the I said in my paper that says, our statute says that there will be a safety fire inspection and they will pay $10 for that inspection. And they should. Because we're talking about the safety of that business, whether it's licensed to feed or not, to make sure the protection of the people who's in there. And that makes really good sense. So that has to stay. We should never mess with public safety. But here's the hard part. And I can't help but think municipality after municipality simply says, you've created a nightmare. Their position is, don't charge any fee for home-based business. Just simple. Then there's no doubt. But we don't weave that line. We still interpolate what we think is the right answer to that, to things like materially, rather than to say significant. And we provide no measurement in our code or even in the statute that gives us any clarity to that. And so really what it comes down to is this, and it's a simple comment that simply says we just leave it and leave the confusion as it is. And we'll ask staff to make a distinction. And based on their interpretation of the distinction, they determine whether or not a fee is required or not. Or we help staff to define it. And we're only talking about home-based business. And that's really the purposeness of the paper. Do we simply want to clarify or do we just want to leave it as it is?
And
That's
Mayor,
the
one
issue.
thing I'd throw out to you, if the council wants to define that, that's a little different than maybe getting a legal interpretation. And we do hire people who
That's right.
deal with fees every day,
Yeah.
and that's their job to do it
That's right.
administratively. And it may be better than having you as council become more administrators and trying to even get into that part of it.
Yeah, oh, no,
But
you're
that's your call,
you're absolutely
it's-
correct,
as a
Andy.
council, that's your call.
How many licensed home-based businesses do we have in Roy?
That's what I was gonna ask.
How many licensed?
I didn't mean to
home-based
put
business
somebody on the
licenses
spot,
do we
but
have?
I'm wondering what.
Approximately in the city. Okay.
Like,
Sorry, Tammy.
that's it?
Okay, 300.
That are licensed and
Oh.
paying fees?
And not all of those pay fees, though. That's just the number that are licensed, correct?
Well, can anybody get I mean, can anybody come in and say, I'm just gonna start up a business? Do you have to show, I mean, to get a license? What,
Well, you're supposed to have a license if
For-
you're in business, but
and
not
so,
everybody does.
but there, I guarantee there's a lot of home businesses that
That
don't have licenses.
Sure.
And,
right.
well,
I'm sure that's everywhere.
right.
Yeah.
So what do the fees go for? Like Ann said, if we're not doing an inspection, I can see that $10 goes for an inspection, but what do the fees go for otherwise then?
Well, the fees should cover the cost of the inspection. So
Right.
it depends. And so when they come in and they interview us, they'll talk and find out, well, how much time do you think this is? How much time do you think fire is there? How much time police? What building inspector, whatever's involved, and each one may be a little different. So it's complicated. And I think that's one reason why it takes so long for this, outside consultants to put things together, because they've got to come up with.
So
all of that.
every home-based business has to have some sort of inspection.
No,
Okay,
No,
so if
no.
so the ones that don't have inspections don't have to pay fees, but if they have inspections, then they have to?
No.
If they have an inspection, that's going to cost
Sure.
something to the city.
Right, that makes
okay?
sense. Yeah.
So, but with this code, it says they only have to pay a fee if it material impacts. So
And so what's the determination of material impacts? Do we throw it all out or do we define it? Or do we leave it?
I think we leave it and then
Just
we'll
leave
make
it
an
and-
administrative decision on it. I think if you throw it all out, then that means, hey, if you have a home-based business, you don't pay a fee at all. And I think we should recoup a fee if we're.
Yeah, because I would argue, I've seen home-based businesses that generate a lot more traffic than a house would normally generate. And
And those should pay.
And then that money that they pay, so why do they pay that? Meaning, why do they pay that?
Reimburse the city for its expenses rather than having other the taxpayer paying for somebody who's doing a home-based business that.
To
impacts
like
city
repair the
services.
road because they have extra people that are coming and for traffic control and police officers. Okay, thank you.
Other comments on that piece?
talking about $50.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. What do you want to do? Now, just recognize when I say what you want to do, you don't do anything. This has to be done through the legal side. Legal side does all of it and presents something back to the council. So we're not asking you to define it. We're just saying is, do you believe that the home-based business needs clarity? Or are you comfortable that the language currently within the city code is adequate?
Well, one thing in regards to administrative fees, I guess that's why we have staff, right? Is they're here to do administrative things. So just to have a fee for administration, I'm not sure if that's kind of what they're service oriented. I mean, why are they here in the city anyway? But we don't do that anyway, right? We're not doing administrative fees. We do other fees. We do the business license fee to cover what we just talked about, right?
I think that all factors in to what they're looking at, how much time different people spend.
Well, if you have an employee that their whole purpose is to process business licensing fees, then or business licenses, then yeah, you're collecting that because you're adding work onto that employee for doing the business license. So the price
Mhm.
of the business license is helping to
Cover
provide
that.
for that employee
Right.
that is doing the
Mhm.
work.
Instead of an additional fee, because that's already part of the business license fee, which makes sense to me. So do we need to change anything, Andy?
I don't think we should with the business licensing.
Okay.
That's my opinion. I think we're covered there. I'll tell you, there's other areas where we make reference to state law rather than spelling it out. And one of those, when we went through the business, changing our business life and talking about, it was with open meetings. So when we're looking at meetings and we get that section on open meetings, we just make reference there to whatever there is under state law, because that's changed a couple of times and it throws something in. If you have that reference, we don't have to constantly go back there, because regardless of what we have there, we've always got to follow state law. It takes precedence for what we make.
Okay.
So that's my preference with this. I do think, though, we've got to make some of those changes where we're talking about the 18-year-olds and the 16-year-olds. And we'll get to that. It won't be a problem unless we actually started enforcing it contrary to what state law says. So those are the things. And we, every spring, typically this year it's in June, we have our city attorneys conference and we go through all the legislation. And we do ask questions like that. Hey, this is confusing. What does this mean? And those are the discussions. And there'll be, I'm sure I'll have a discussion with some of the people down there dealing with some of these licensing issues too. That's typically what we do. And so we can come back and, if I see that there's something there more additional that we need to do, I'd be more than happy to do that. The food truck stuff, we'll get that taken care of. We'll make those changes and some of these other things. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really the key. Interesting enough, House Bill 146, the only two things that changed was the food truck and an element dealing with ATVs and licensing ATVs. Everything else that we've been talking about was changed in 2017 or in 2009. The disappropriated fees requirement, if you remember in that conversation that I sent you, it requires that there be an ordinance filed by the city that basically makes a distinction of how we get this disappropriated fees. I was kind of hoping that in fact we had that since that law was passed in 2009. But I'm not able to find it. So I'd ask maybe Matt, Andy, if you can help us on, do we have an ordinance that and I'm just reading what the law says.
Back when we were dealing with the apartments, and I'm trying to think of.
That's where it comes from. Yeah.
So we used Lewis, Young, and Birmingham again to figure out what the disproportionate fees
Right.
were. And we had an ordinance that passed that.
Oh, perfect.
For that area.
Yeah, if you've got, that's all it says. The law says we have to have an ordinance passed. If the ordinance has been passed, then I think that satisfies the requirement. If not, we just have to do that.
So if we get into another area where we're talking about disproportionate fees, that's what we'd have to do.
Yeah, and then it goes in there, the law back in 2019 says you have to make sure that those fees are reasonable. And that's so subjective. And the only way I recommended that we just simply look at disproportionated fees from other municipalities to kind of see if we're in balance with what other cities are charging.
And what we've noticed too, Mayor, is that we're low compared to other cities too. And
Yeah,
that's
we charge $33 to every rental unit that's in the city. And so if you're saying the other ones are higher than that, then we may be in really good shape. But I don't know what that answer is. And to be honest with you, when you ever go in a deep dive into these laws, you start to pull out things and you say, man, do we have that? Do we don't have that? And that was really the intent, is just to make sure that we have that. So here's what I think the takeaway from this effort is, unless you tell me otherwise. Leave it as it is. Don't change the licensing document, right?
Right.
Right.
Change the food truck because House Bill 146 did say it. And according to our law, municipal code, he says we're required to put a licensee requirement, including those food truck businesses already licensed. And and the exemption says not to include mobile food vending businesses. And we do today practically, if a food truck comes into the city and it's licensed in another municipality, we don't charge them a new license. But our statute does not say that. So we just need to clean the statute up to make sure and I've showed what that is, Municipal Code 3-1-12. And then, as we stated, we just need to bring our 3-1-12 that talks about 16-year-olds and change that to 18-year-olds. And it would be helpful, council, if you're okay with this. I just can't see charging an 11-year-old child sitting on a corner selling some lemonade, and I'm going to charge them $4.50. Or some kid that's out there.
That needs to go.
Yeah, let's just clean up our licensing fee schedule so it doesn't give the perception of that we're basically forcing children to pay a license, because that's what the statute says today. Okay, did I miss anything? Okay, just remind me not to send you another 36-page document, okay? Okay, with that then, City Manager?
Yeah, I got a couple of things. This Saturday is the opening day for baseball. So if you'd like to see the mayor throw a ball, see how good he is, come on out.
Please do not
12:30.
show.
Yep.
Throw your shoulder out.
Yeah, don't hurt yourself. This is the last month. May is the last month for the utility bill. We've talked about this a couple of times. June is the first monthly bill. The CTC dinner was this last week. They did leave some signs downstairs, and they've asked if we could put them up on our city property for the Roy High graduates, just in different locations. So if you would like to help out with that, please get with Brittany on that.
I have some at my house too, if you want some.
Okay, perfect. There's a ton of them down there. We've received some application. We've talked about this a little bit before about red curb, but we were waiting on the weather. The weather has gotten better now that we can start painting red curb. There was a little bit of delay as well because we were waiting on the paint. The paint is now in, so we'll be starting that in the next couple of weeks as
Sounds
well.
colorful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to shift back to those signs. So a lot of people ask, if I don't have a son or daughter graduating, do I get one? It's not recognizing your child, it's recognizing all the graduates. So, anybody can have one and put them up just to show support for our graduating class.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We did talk in a previous city council meeting about providing dinner to the academics teams and sports teams this fall. We're having issues coordinating a date. So talking to Roy High School, we're going to start doing that next year for the 3 seasons, like we talked about. We need to schedule that early. We're just having a lot of hard times. We would pick a date and then we'd have problems with that date. So we're going to push it off, start next fall.
Okay.
And then last but not least, as you all know, we all attended ULCT. When we were down there, you probably noticed that when we were in some of the conferences, that there was members of councils and mayors that all shared the same shirts. So that is something we have not done for the city council for a little bit, but wanted to get your guys' thoughts on doing shirts and jackets and different things for the city council.
Royal blue.
Royal blue.
Oh, is that your, oh, that's,
Oh,
you
And I
weren't
assume
asking
that
that?
means you're affirmative.
No,
huh? I think there's a logo that goes with that I think is
Oh.
also present. All
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
How much are those? And I'm happy to pay for them. I think that it's nice to show our unity, and I'm happy to pay for that as well. So.
All right.
Everybody okay with the
Mhm.
idea? Okay, Joe? Okay, I think you got a majority. Thank you. Anything else?
Nope, that was it.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, council, anything you've got? Okay, I just got a
Just
couple.
one day
Go
that
ahead.
sign down in the north section of town will be up. You moved the dirt around like Ross, like you wanted. So,
Okay,
and I know that's done. He's texted me pictures of it. So one day. And then will you take down the old one? Yeah, as soon as they get the new one up. It was somebody's some scouts project back in the 70s. I don't even know who did it. But maybe you can stick it in a shed somewhere just in case they want it. So,
okay. Well, are you okay with that, council? It's important that we all agree to go ahead and ask Public Works that they're okay with removing that old sign.
yeah, I mean, it's so
Okay,
old. and-
Diane? Right, okay. I got a majority. I think we can do that, Ross. Okay. Anything else? Let me just share a
Quick
couple.
comment. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Just a quick comment. I was able to go to Lizzie, staff meeting for Parks and Rec, and I was able to see some of the training and what she puts into all the spring sports and the baseball and the softball and the t-ball, and what a program. And I can see why so many people come from all over to be a part of that. Her training, I was just like, wow, I was pretty proud of her. I was pretty excited. It was good to see. It was great to see, actually.
Yeah, great
So yeah,
comment.
she's got a good group of youth to employees and a lot more employees. She actually passed on that because of that increase, she does have enough employees.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, that's great news. Just a couple of things, council, that Matt didn't mention. Let me see if I can follow up. Andy, when you check with when you're working with those lawyers on that, I was reading House Bill 439. That one really got my attention only for its elected public body transparency amendment. And it talks about recording votes if it involves people who are electronically weighing in. Could you take a look at that and see, and House Bill 439, it goes into law tomorrow. We got some time, but I just want to make sure that if there's some changes in terms of how we record votes when people are on Zoom or something, I just need to make sure I'm on the straight on that, please. Thank you. It was discussed in our WACOG meeting yesterday that the county is now going to be the sole owner of the Children's Justice Center.
Awesome.
So with that, they're going to come back again to each of the councils, and they're going to ask us to use ARPA funds to help build a brand new Children's Justice Center. I believe Chief Wynn might have us some insight into that with his officers. We can still have that dialogue, but I'll wait for that official notification or request, and then we'll work from there with the council, Matt. Okay. June 25th and 26th, there will be an air and space show at Hill Air Force Base. I will tell you, Northern Utah is prepping for that. We had a little bit of conversation. I know the chief's on it. They're anticipating over those 2 days about 500,000 people. To get into the base, they get in through Roy Gate and I believe the West Gate or Clearfield Gate. I'm trying to figure which one it was, probably the Clearfield Gate.
They'll have a plan and they'll have all three gates, but they'll have an ingress and an egress set up. So, and it's 700,000 there.
It's up to 700 now? Okay.
Largest air show in the world.
Yeah, it's a great show if you've never seen it. Everybody's invited, no cost, all free. But if you do have an interest, UTA will put bus service out of the Clearfield TOD or the train station down there, and free service with UTA buses Saturday and Sunday into the base and back. So they're going to take about 20 or 30 acres and park cars there. Invite your friends and yourself if you'd like to go see that show. It'll be a hoot.
Comment on that. Do we tell our businesses about this so that they're ready? I mean, that's a lot of people.
That's
Like,
what I
think
just said.
of
The
Burger Bar, do
better
they
make lots
know?
more buns.
Yeah. Is there something we do?
You can put something in the newsletter and get some stuff
Yeah,
out there.
and then it'll probably
yeah.
be in the newspaper too. If anyone takes, I still take the
Especially to
paper.
those businesses up
Advertise it.
there on that top piece, like yeah,
What was that? Smart
that's
one?
good for them. That's
Okay, with you, we'll take that as an action, just to bring awareness to it. Okay, again, the 25th, 26th of June. We got our 2022 Easy Ramp grants. I believe, Travis, you put in for, I'll repeat it, the Roy City 2023 Easter egg hunt. About 700. Lindsay did it? Okay. Well, all I can tell you is according to what I received last night, Roy City got $765, easy grant, okay? If you want a list, Matt, I left you a list of all the grants that were received to all the cities. There's a pretty good sized list. And council, if you're interested, at 9:30 a.m. Memorial Day cemetery event, we'll be basically, they'll do the placing the flags on all veterans graves. That is the 30th of May. If you or your family would like to see and be part of that, it's kind of fun because they allow the children to take the flags and put them on. They put the crosses up and they allow them to put the flags on the crosses. It's kind of a nice event. And,
It is, yeah.
and so if you get a chance on the 30th, you may want to participate in that. You're surely welcome, 9:30 a.m. Other than that, I have nothing else. Anything else from the council? Navina, do you have anything you'd like to share with us?
I'll let you go first.
Oh.
I'll talk to Matt about the
Instagram?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Other than that, I think.
Okay, well, keep us posted. You got graduations coming up and a bunch of other stuff. We really want to stay on top of that, okay?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Glad to have you here. You had a comment?
Just reporting back from the sewer board. Kevin Cowan, the manager of the sewer district's been there over 30 years. He announced just recently he's retiring. They posted his job. They took applications, board members sorted through them. There are 4 board members and 1 current personnel that's on the interview committee. I'm one of the interview committees to hire his replacement. We will be doing those interviews on Friday.
Oh.
And we're hoping to put that person to at least have a month of overlap. A lot of good quality applicants that come in. So I'll report back how that goes next council meeting. The Gilbert Bay outfall is still plugging along. I know some people have been out there and seen that. If you haven't driven out on Antelope Island anytime recently, I would take a trip out there just to look at the pipe they're putting out there. It is quite a process. Take a few minutes, stop, watch. It's the biggest pipe of that size this side of the Mississippi that's going on.
Wow.
So it's a pretty big project, but it's plugging right along. So they're ahead of schedule. Things are going well.
Is that being, going to be the new water they put in that's going to fill the Great Salt Lake? Is that their plan?
Well, they're taking in the water out of Farmington Bay and dumping it into Gilbert Bay
Oh, okay.
because the water that we're putting into it is actually, it's more pure than the water that's there, and it's changing the content of Farmington Bay. Of course, Farmington Bay looks like it's drying up now, but fortunately, when the engineers designed the outfall, which where it'll drop out, they have the ability to pump farther out. So even though it'll create its own channel as it goes out, so that should be there for a long time to come. But pretty big project.
Yeah, that's perfect. Last comment, council, remember, we're going to try to work a schedule to get us to a work session to work the budget. You've got it in front of you. Please read it, mark it up, and come prepared. We'll kind of flush through it and come up with a document. Unless there's something glaring, I doubt we will basically need two, but if we do believe we need two work sessions, we'll work those in. But please plan on at least attending the first one. We'll try to get that done. With that then, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I just want to thank Amber and Matt again for all the hard work that
Oh,
they
yeah.
did on that
Yeah,
budget.
that's a
So,
nice job.
yeah.
Yeah, great comment. So
the
with
good
that end,
numbers
can I, got a motion to
I
adjourn?
motion that we adjourn.
Okay, thank
I'll
you.
back that motion up with a second.
Okay, appreciate that, Paul. Okay, Joe, Paul, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, enjoy your day. Good session.
Oh, food trucks are still there. I want a corn dog.